Record. Okay. And good. Okay. Hello, Servus, grüß euch. Welcome back to the podcast, He as a Bird. I am your host, Sean Shelton, and here with me, I have my good friend, pichler Max Pichler. We are here to finish The Tiger King. And
yes, sir.
And so, Max, yeah, welcome back. And Max, episode 5. Holy shit balls. Hey, before we start, you and I, pretty well, did pretty good job.
Yeah.
You said somebody was going to die.
And you predicted who's going to be it.
He just, yeah. Anyways, so let's start with some
Such
characters.
A poorly written character.
So he just had a killable face, which is bad to say because there was a real person. Let's start with some new characters. So episode 5 gave us some new characters that we hadn't met before, starting with Alan. So Alan is Jeff Lowe's right-hand man. He called him to do all the handiwork around him. Jeff Lowe was slowly trying to get rid of Joe's guys and brought in his own. He was a convicted felon. He has a teardrop tattoo, and he hated Joe. Because Joe tried to tell him what to do, and he didn't listen. So when Alan was introduced, you kind of knew that something was going to happen with him. You know what I mean? He wasn't just a normal worker.
They introduced him kind of flashy. Like, he actually did say a lot of stuff on camera that made him look like just a lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
Who basically do anything.
Yep.
But like in a like aggressive way, just pretty.
I think when somebody introduced somebody as loyal, somebody like Jeff who goes, yeah, this guy's loyal. It's like, all right, he's done some shit for you.
And they mention it, like they even mentioned the teardrop tattoo
Mm-hmm.
in the documentary when they say, "Oh, you must have killed someone before."
I mean, when you're looking around and you're trying to find somebody to kill somebody, you find the guy with a teardrop tattoo. So you meet Alan, then you meet this fat shit James. I really dislike this man. And when he said that he was, we'll get to it later, but when he said that he decided to be an informant because it was a noble thing to do, I could have gone through my TV and just drop kicked this guy. So he's a fat, lying local businessman that became partners, one of many Jeff's many business partners throughout the thing, and was consulting with Jeff about how to reopen revamp the zoo. Exactly. And you can just tell from the minute you meet him, he's a snake.
He kind of looks like the World of Warcraft gamer in this episode. Sits on the chair and after playing for Cartman for playing World of Warcraft for 3 days straight. Yeah, kind of. And the last one, who's one of my favorite characters, is Joshua, the campaign manager, which we'll get into later. But this guy was a Walmart manager and became a gay redneck zoo owner's campaign manager. He said it was his dream job, and why did his
dream job?
Why did he do it? Like, because he was good at doing promotional videos, I think.
Something like that. Like he wanted to get into. He was always interested in politics. He's a libertarian, which means he's kind of out there with his political beliefs, anyways. And he got to represent a guy running for political office as a libertarian. So he's like, fell right in his lap as a manager at Walmart. What else are you going to do? So, but he ends up being a very charismatic and like loving character. But we'll talk about his involvement later. But those are the 3 main characters that are introduced, especially in episode 5. But episode 5 was a doozy. So it starts off by basically announcing that what we already knew, kind of, that John and Travis are not actually gay at all. So the whole porno spiel did not really work out that well.
Yeah, that's when they announced it, they kind of set up the part where pretty much everything for Joe starts falling apart. Like first him realizing, or like being forced to realize that John and Travis are actually not gay, and
Yeah.
that it just kicks off all the other shit
Yeah.
that's going.
Well, not only are they not gay, John, who had been with, I wanted to say who's been with Joe for 11 years, something like that,
11 years, yeah.
was also involved with the receptionist who he impregnated. And then you find out that they stayed around, and not that they didn't actually have an emotional connection with Joe. Hello. And they were all hooked on meth. Joe was their source of meth, which you knew John was a meth head just by looking at him. But turns out Travis is the biggest drug addict out of any of them.
Yeah, they kind of portrayed him a little more innocent than he actually was
Yeah.
when he introduced him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They, oh, this sweetheart from Southern California. And no, not the case. Not the case. He was very much on drugs all the time, and he didn't work. He just rode his ATV around and shot shit, which is a great life, but then turns out temporarily a great life. And he fell into depression, started making, the crazy thing was, like, when he just started walking around pointing guns at people, like that's a red flag.
Yeah, but they in the interviews they made it seem like he did that for a while always being funny though. But
Yeah, but I feel like,
normally that's more like an indication for harming other people, not himself. Maybe it was an accident. Who knows? But it kind of points towards being not an accident.
yeah, maybe not. So he ended up uh, committing suicide. And the crazy thing, it was right in the office, and the security footage doesn't see Travis, but it sees Joshua, who's working on the campaign, which we'll get to in a bit, and just his reaction. And that was kind of one of the moments of the show that was like, okay, like that's all, this is fun and games, but we just witnessed a man kill himself. And for me, that was kind of a sobering, like, this whole thing is ridiculous, but watching Josiah watch Travis kill himself was a little bit like a holy shit moment for me watching it.
Yeah, it was because like you watched him and it took like 10 to 15 seconds for him to realize it.
Yeah.
And he said in the interview that he thought it was a joke or something. And he, for a second, you kind of think that he starts smiling or smirking, I don't know, because he thought it was a joke. And then
Right.
you see like panic.
But he also said it was like mixed feelings, because he also said he knew he was dead the second he pulled the trigger, because you see the flash in the video, and then he just goes like this and like holds his face. And yeah, that was one of the more sobering moments of the show, where you're like, holy shit. I mean, for a different reason. The other thing is like absurd, but this is, you don't see that every day. You don't see any of it any day, but you don't see that often. So unfortunately, we predicted that. Just, I didn't think it was going to be in that way. That was surprising me. I thought an accident was going to happen.
Yeah, maybe some car accident, or like
just some dumb shit, not something.
Limbs,
yeah,
like maybe
exactly.
something with the Tigers.
Exactly.
But I didn't really think it would be suicide.
No, because
but they kind of foreshadowed that it would be Travis, but not that he would kill himself.
Exactly. So Joshua saw Travis commit murder while he was working on the campaign. What we mean by that is Joe thought it would be a great idea to run for president. And then when he figured out that was not really obtainable, he decided to run for governor. So he hired Joshua, who was a Walmart manager that he knew. And I think it said Joe had heard him talking about politics or something. So that was the reason. He was like, oh, he must know what he's talking about. And what it actually looked like he ran a pretty good campaign.
Yeah, he was being himself. And
yeah.
but kudos for the condoms. Like,
Condoms
what
with
was
your
his, what was this the thing he said? Like, if you're gonna get screwed by the politics, it might as well do it with a condom with my head on it.
I mean, he had several one-liners. It's so crazy. But what blows my mind, and this is a lot of what happened in the show, is not normal life in America, obviously, but it's more normal in Oklahoma. Like, people I need to know what Oklahoma is. And I think the biggest example of what Oklahoma is that 19% of the population, 1 in 5 voters, voted for this man to be governor. That's Oklahoma in a nutshell. That's all you need to know, that 1 of 5 voters, thousands and thousands of people, related to Joe Exotic.
I got a question.
Yes.
Like, because I'm not too familiar with American politics. What does a governor do? Is it like a Landeshauptmann? Like
Yeah, exactly. It's like
right.
Platina for Tyrol.
Okay.
Yeah. So he is basically the president of his state, and he governs all state laws. Yeah. He's the president of the state, and then only person who could supersede him of federal laws, obviously, by the country's president.
Okay.
It's baffling. 1 in 5.
19%.
19%. Baffling.
It's crazy.
So anyways, during this time while he's doing the campaign, they're also talking about changes that Jeff had done to Jeff is currently doing to the zoo and the dysfunction. And then you find out that there's a lot of tension between Alan and Joe. And then James is introduced. This is kind of going into episode 7. And James starts talking. And it turns out that James becomes an informant for the FBI. Because
the wildlife
and the wildlife, yeah, exactly, wildlife, and which is all federal agencies.
Yeah.
And what had happened is, why he was doing that is that Joe was being investigated for embezzling money because he used park money to pay for his campaign, which is illegal. You can't do that. It has to be publicly funded or whatever. There's only certain ways you can fund your own campaign. I don't know the complete legality of it, but obviously it's apparent that Joe doesn't understand the legal ramifications of his actions either. So he's being investigated for that. And it turns out during this investigation, they figure out that he's trying to hire somebody to kill Carol Baskins. So James becomes an informant, talks to Jeff when he gets out of prison or jail in Las Vegas, because he's a scumbag too. And what had transpired is Joe actually gave Alan $3,000 to drive to Tampa and kill it. They mapped it out on Google Maps with Jeff's help, allegedly. And then Alan didn't do it. They all became informants, and basically everybody turned on Joe. And that was kind of what episode 8 was the illegality of everything. And everybody was testifying against Joe, including his own workers, which was sad. But it turns out that they found 5 tiger bones in his backyards, and even the crazy thing though is even the employees that loved him and adored him turned on him in court, and because he was breaking the law on a consistent basis.
Even John, his husband, ex-husband
at that point.
Even him, he testified against him. He was and he said something like, there were a lot of people in the room on Joe's side, but nobody was really on Joe's side. Like, they were just sitting there, but nobody was there for him.
Exactly.
He lost pretty much everyone because he treated people like shit. When he got
go ahead.
Yeah. No, because he just was also a con man.
Well, and this is we skipped over a pretty vital part, but basically 7 into 8, it was Joe's character being torn down, and one of the biggest things for me that was, through the meth thing and realizing that he basically kept 2 meth heads addicted so he could keep them in relationships and everything like that, and then obviously he had one that was so depressed that he ended up taking his life. But the thing that ruined Joe for me was the funeral.
Yeah.
And then
Whew.
subsequently what happened after the funeral. But the funeral, Travis's funeral, this man had the audacity in front of Travis's family, mother crying, to sit there and talk about how Travis used to teabag him to cheer him up and started talking about his testicles as golden nuggets. And then sang at the funeral like it was a fucking concert. You know what I mean? Like it's always about Joe.
Yeah,
And
he was just pointing like every finger at him. Like he was the star of his show, and he was the star of this funeral.
and you know what? The biggest indictment of Joe's character, because he's been portrayed as this lovable guy with
Yeah.
huge emotions and really cares. This fucker got married 2 months later.
And he even invited
Invited the
his
mother.
mom just to get a picture done, like for social media.
Never talked to her again. So Joe's not this guy that they introduced him as either. He's a fucking asshole. And so when everybody turned on him, it's not surprising. Now in episode 8, episode 7, the final episode, they're also kind of portraying that he got set up. So what ended up happening is Joe got 22 years in prison sentenced, and they kind of try to make it look like he got set up. And he might have, and Jeff might have worked him, but I don't feel bad for Joe at all. I mean, this guy has made mistake after mistake after mistake, manipulated people all the time, and got himself in this position where he needed Jeff. And he got himself in this position where he owed Carol Baskins $1 million because he's an idiot. He's an idiot. So even if Jeff set him up, I don't feel bad for him at all, because he did break the law on a consistent basis. And that's why there was 19 counts against him, not just
But
one.
He was proven guilty in all of them.
And 3 hours, you know how fast 3 hours is for a jury of 12 people to decide that he's guilty on 19 counts? That was like, what is that?
No
15
brainer.
minutes? Yeah, 15 minutes on every count. Like, hey, you guys think you did it? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So that.
What do you think? Like, what do you think made the jury decide so quick? Like, what was the main reason? Which of the felonies or which of the?
I think the main thing is that nobody really defended him. You know what I mean? There was nobody who was interviewed, or nobody that was examined, or I forget the proper legal term. Everybody pointed to something he did illegally, right? Like even his workers that love him, like they bring these people in and it's like, yeah, he's been selling cats for this many years. Here's all the books, which they found. And because Jeff Lowe let them raid his house, so they found all the documents of $5,000 for this tiger cub, $5,000 for this. And so it's like, yeah, it was either he was neglecting the animals, he was selling the animals, he was breeding the animals, all illegal, and
shooting them sometimes.
Yeah, euthanizing them, which they found the bones. And he said they were sick, and his workers said they weren't, because the guy that you like, the long hair guy, the zookeeper, he was like, I looked in these animals' eyes as he killed them, and that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Like they weren't sick. He couldn't afford them anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the same shit Doc was doing, who's a scumbag. And he was going all Nazi on these cubs. And
yeah, but that was pretty fucked up. That is exactly the thing you would expect from a cult leader, if you think hard about it.
Yeah. So I don't feel bad for Joe at all. I don't feel bad for. There's literally to wrap it up before we move on. So Joe gets convicted. He's in jail, and while he was in jail, he's basically committed himself to taking everybody else down, like a little schoolgirl. And now he's working with PETA, which is the People Against Poor Treatment of Animals or something like that, to bring down everybody else. So Doc got busted. Tim Stark is going to get busted. Everybody. So the major winner out of this whole thing is Carol. Carol won the war by far.
Even though the Big Cat Safety Act did not pass.
Did not pass.
Yeah.
So she lost
And
that battle. But ultimately, she won the war by
yeah,
far.
sure.
Because now her biggest rival, Joe, who she helped put in prison, is now doing the exact thing that they can't. He has all
He's ratting
this.
them out.
Exactly. He has all this incriminating information to get everybody in trouble, which they can't have. And now he's doing her dirty work. So it's
like, if you do something like that, would you expect to do it for a better deal than 22 years?
I think it was after the fact of 22 years. So maybe he gets a shorter time because he cooperates. I don't know. Who knows? But
But if it turns out like this and he's gonna be released prior to 22 years, which probably is gonna happen, let's say 5 years, you would need to put him in witness protection.
most likely, because he was saying there's 30 people that he can help bring down, and yeah, so he's going to end up doing all of this work for Carol, and she won by far, not even close. She won by far. So as soon as a reaction, or as soon as it ended, that was my first reaction, like Carol won. And the two things that I have written down is I've never watched a show where I've hated 80% of the characters. Like I can name on one hand the characters I actually liked and thought were decent people. Everybody else, I really hated. Every main character I hated. I hated Carol. I hated Doc. Doc was the least of the problems in the first 4 episodes. And then he realized what he was doing. And it's like, okay, yeah, he's as terrible as you think he is. I hate Jeff. I hate Alan. I hate James. I hate all of them.
Yeah, and Carol is the worst. Like, but what really impresses me about the documentation, though, is that it is written pretty good. Like,
sure,
it's real events, but like how they give you the bits and pieces.
They did a great job.
They paint the picture of the people perfectly. It kind of reminded me of Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it starts out like people doing stuff because they need to, and it turns into being like major criminals.
Yeah.
And you see like the decline of humanity in these people. The show did a pretty good job of portraying this like this.
Well, it was interesting how it ended. I think how it ended was so significant. And with them, these early videos of Joe.
Yeah.
And it was like he was talking anti-breeding and he was talking about the protection of animals. And it really seemed like he started the zoo for them.
Yeah.
And he even said, like, they don't belong in Oklahoma. They belong in Asia, China, and India. Or Asia, Africa, and India. Yeah. It's like they don't belong here, and we just need to take care of them since they are here. And then you just see through the show that it became more about him and less about them. And I think that was the demise. And a couple of notes that I have that are just funny things I picked up on. Opening a restaurant and feeding people expired Walmart meat. Wow.
Disguised as exquisite pizza.
Wow. That is unbelievable. These people would do nothing to just earn some money.
Don't you think that McDonald's is way better?
I have no idea.
It's pretty much the same. Just marketed better.
I don't know. But that is a ballsy move. But he feeds his employees it, so why not feed customers? Yeah. Joe's names, by the way. His original name is Joe Schreibvogel. So his given name is Joe Writing Bird, which why he didn't like it. And then what was interesting to me, he took Travis's name.
Yeah.
He didn't take John's name. He took Travis's name. And then when he married for the third time to Dylan, who we haven't really talked about because there's not really anything to talk about.
Unless that he looks like Avicii.
He looks like Avicii and seems like a nice kid, and God bless him because he got himself involved with the wrong person. And then when he did marry Dylan, he took a double name from Dylan. So now his official name when getting convicted was Joe
Joseph Maldonado
Passage. So that was
Passage.
interesting, which tells me that he was in credit debt or something, and he kept changing his last name to hide, because there are
Same
people
way he
that do
did
that.
it with the Sioux, like
Exactly.
writing over ownership and
Exactly. So he just is so manipulative.
it's like really funny that he thought, like, on all these episodes, like basically in every episode there's one change, and I think that he thought that he can get out of any
Absolutely.
just
Absolutely.
changing the name.
No, I think that's why prison is or jail is so hard for him, and why he broke down a little bit, because he never in a million years would anticipate being there. It wasn't even a possibility for him. One thing I thought funny was John's tattoo. It said privately owned Joe Exotic right above his crotch.
Yeah.
What, you have to be a meth head to get that tattoo. I mean, are you kidding me? This is a straight man who gets a tattoo of his husband saying he privately owns him. And then gets a big ass bullhead to cover it up, and it doesn't even cover it up completely. It's like,
I gotta share my screen like for a second.
okay.
Opened up a picture. Wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just a second, because I saw that today, and I wanted to show it to you.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. Can you see it?
Yes. Oh, he's got new teeth.
Yeah. So
Good for
Netflix
him.
pays the bills now.
Because, well, he wasn't the only one. The John
Yeah.
Ranke, the guy you like, also got brand new teeth.
Yeah. Because
It's
when
amazing what
I just
dentistry
watched
will do,
this.
right?
Yeah. And why not?
Yeah.
So how can I?
I'm sure if you go down to the bottom and just exit out share screen. No, I'm sure they're all getting pretty nice checks from Netflix. Mm-hmm.
All right.
So that was funny. John's tattoo was funny. The fake post from Belize when he was on the run with Dylan. And if you read the post, so he posts pictures of him on the beach in the water with Dylan and in love, and like, oh, we're in Belize, and which he wasn't. He was in Florida, and which is so stupid. Why would you go? Anyways, that he put hashtag gay boy underneath every single post, and it was just like, what are you doing, dude? What are you do? Hashtag gay boy? So I thought that was funny. Joe mentioned while putting on a pair of pants that he has a Prince Albert piercing, which is,
Don't share your screen. Don't share your
no,
screen.
I'm not going to share the screen. But for people who don't know what a Prince Albert is, Prince Albert is one of the most common male genitalia piercings. The Prince Albert is a ring-style piercing that extends along the underside of the glands from the urethra opening, the pee hole, to where the glands meet the shaft of the penis. So basically, it's a ring-shaped piercing that goes into your urethra and to the head of your penis, like this, and just hangs there.
It's like a nose ring on a bull.
Exactly. So that was an interesting information to disclose. Although, again, not surprising.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Why do you think it's called Prince Albert?
I have no idea. I don't want to dig too much further. I saw some pictures and I'm good. I got a question for you. What happened to
Sure.
Joe's knee?
Nobody knows. Like
Right?
all of a sudden, he has this braces and then this walking.
Limp and walking cane. I mean, when he got attacked by the tiger and it like ripped his foot out from underneath him, I felt kind of bad. It was like a gimpy old man.
Yeah, but when that happened, he already had the braces.
Yeah, for sure. But it made me think like what happened to his knee? Why does he have a limp and why does he need a knee brace all the time? But nobody addressed it, right?
Arthritis, maybe.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I had a quote that he said that I literally stopped and I was like, I stopped the Netflix and had to take it down because I didn't want to forget it. I'm gayer than a $3 bill. Gayer than a $3 bill. There's no $3 bills. And I've never heard that expression before in my life. I'm gayer than a $3 bill.
Maybe you should get that copyrighted.
I've
Trademark.
maybe that's some Oklahoma stuff that I'm not aware of, but I've never heard that before.
It's like meth. Some Oklahoma
No,
things.
meth is very, very much Oklahoma and southern Missouri, and yeah, not so great areas of the states.
Shout out to the people living there, doing meth right now.
No, don't do meth, guys. Don't do meth. It'll fuck up your teeth.
Don't buy a tiger.
So after every documentary like this, I always immediately start researching what the documentary left out. And this one wasn't so drastic, not like making the murder or something like that. But there are some interesting details that they left out. First of all, the first thing I read was they have so much more footage that it's almost guaranteed to be a part 2. Because
remind me about that at the end.
Okay. So one thing that they found out or that was left out is John wasn't Joe's first husband, or John
He wasn't.
Travis. He was not. He'd been married twice before. And the first one died of HIV, complications of HIV, which is sad. But the other one, he abused. I shouldn't smile when I say that. The other husband was actually abusive and sent Joe to the hospital once or twice. They got divorced or broke up, or I think they were actually legally married, so divorced. Then later on, the guy molested a child and murdered somebody in the first degree. So like purposefully murdered somebody. So tough start to your marital career, but he ended up strong with Dylan. So Dylan was technically his 5th husband. What was left out was kind of Joe's childhood. They touched on it, saying he didn't have an easy childhood, but apparently he was.
Oh, whoa.
What? What?
You just did some kind of foreshadowing, but go on.
What do you mean?
You just said they touched on it.
Oh. Joe was sexually abused as a child, as a 5-year-old, apparently. So they literally and figuratively touched on it, which is sad. But the next thing was really heartbreaking. I mean, that's heartbreaking, but was really heartbreaking for both of us is Joe didn't write or sing any of his songs.
I'm disappointed. I think I'm gonna delete the album again.
That was one of the most disappointing things of the documentary.
Hey, because it was so promising and made me feel better.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, and he had 2 guys write and sing it, and then he just lip synced the music videos. So it's actually not him singing at all.
I had a feeling that he might not play the guitar because in the video he was just doing like.
Yeah, no, it was pretty obvious. And then another thing that they left out that probably would have made everything very obvious about Joe's character, and that's probably why they strategically left it out. But after the studio burnt down, which was Joe, because guess what? Joe burnt more evidence later in the show, so kind of caught a theme there. He faked dying of cancer and used it for sympathy and fundraising. So he posted a picture in the hospital where he looks terrible in the picture if you look it up. And his lips are all dry, and it looked like he could be going through chemotherapy, which is a popular way to treat not prostate cancer, so that wouldn't even make sense anyways. But it turns out that his prostate was inflamed, and he was severely dehydrated, and he had a severe outbreak of herpes, genital herpes. So he spun that into faking that he was dying of cancer and asked for support financially. So this guy's pretty much just a piece of shit, just like everybody else in the show. And so lastly, he is suing the U.S. government for $95 million that he'll never get.
What is claim? Like
his claim is that basically neglect, that he's been wrongfully convicted by the Wild and Game and the federal agencies, and that Donald Trump's cabinet and department of the federal legislation didn't do their due diligence in this case and let it happen, basically. So neglect of the federal government. So the wrongful conviction and neglect from two different federal agencies.
So basically, he's just fucking with them. Like,
yeah, I mean, he just
he must know that he's getting nothing out of this.
I have no idea what he knows. I don't know what his reality is in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, I ended this with like, man, I've never watched a show where I've hated so many characters, and it was the most unreal story that I've ever heard or seen. And it's a terrible reflection of a small percentage of the states that actually live this way. And yeah, I didn't leave the documentary with a good feeling. Really, it was like,
me neither.
I mean, I couldn't. It was like the reporter in the Oklahoma news that they interviewed throughout the show. She said it best. It was a train wreck. It was a train wreck that you just couldn't take your eyes off of, and that's exactly what this show was.
Like, as much as I liked watching the show, like the last episode was like really a downer. Like,
yeah,
it's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah.
It was the penultimate one was the highlight, and the final episode was supposed to like put a mirror in front of people's eyes, like, hey, what the fuck? You sympathize with these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you? And I feel like it's supposed to be humbling, the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I like the show, I'm not really looking forward to a second season, but I think there's going to be one.
I think there is too.
And that's why I said, remind me about it. Because like what we didn't mention was like, it was only one sentence in the final episode, but I think there was some kind of marketing purpose, and also maybe some kind of teaser trailer, sneak peek. Mm-hmm. Because they actually mentioned that Jeff Lowe, that he might end up in jail for something much worse than lying under oath and taking part in a murder for hire.
Yep. No, I think Jeff's got something terrible coming to him. I think Doc has something terrible coming to him. I think this Tim Stark guy that ended up being Jeff's business partner for a short while, he's going to be involved somehow. They even said that he's talking to Joe and trying to cooperate with PETA so he doesn't get screwed. And the only person that comes out of this and it somewhat clean is Carol. And the funny thing is, everybody hates her and thinks she's a murderer. So the whole thing is completely, and I think the Joshua guy, you mentioned it before we started recording, the Joshua guys like voiceover and like this humanity speech that he gave was But it was 100% true. They were so worried
Yeah.
and such shitty people and so worried about batting each other that the animals ultimately suffered. And people forgot that. It was like the whole thing with Doc Antle doing what he did to tiger cubs and burning them, or putting them in gas chambers and then burning them. That was like a side note of this, which is a disgusting story. Like, and that was just like, oh yeah, by the way, Doc did this. What? And so, no, I definitely think there'll be a second one. I definitely think more people are going down, and it'll be interesting to see what Joe does with PETA and how many people he can bring down. And I'm in the same boat with you. I'm not really excited to watch it, but I have to.
Yeah. It's addicting.
Yep. Exactly.
But 2 points I want to actually mention. Like the first is, how great would be a second season dealing with everything that's happened with Jeff Lowe?
I think that's going to be the main thing, is
because like
how shitty
this
he
is
is.
Some place where we never seen anything. Like we just saw, like we just barely scratched the surface of what this guy is about.
Exactly.
And the second thing is, like, I think it's 1-1 between you and me. You correctly predicted who's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talked about the stuff in the last podcast, I said, I think the murder case of Carol's husband will be reopened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think yesterday or today it was announced that they reopened the case.
Yeah. But I read an article where they're getting like 6 calls a day of possible leads and stuff, but they haven't found anything. But no, she didn't come out clean, but she came out the cleanest. And I'm sure there'll be a second part. When there is a second part, we'll review it, just like we did this one in our bin watching segment. And until then, we will find another one. We've already had multiple conversations, but we'll find another one to review and try to find some good content for you guys to watch and listen to us review. And during this time of need is the best way to say it.
Yeah, when you gotta appreciate it, like how much time you have right now for doing stuff that has no purpose.
Yeah, it's true. And if you guys have any suggestions for us or want to hear us review something, write Max, write me. You can find both of us on Instagram or any social media, or write in the comments of all the podcasts. I see that. So let us know if you have something that you want us to review. If not, we'll pick something out, and I'm sure in the next few weeks we'll get something else out for you guys. So Max, thank you for coming on again.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And for everybody else out there, stay safe and ciao, cacao.
Daheim bleiben.
Mm-hmm.